Welcome back to Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. This is season 2 of the podcast, where I invite guests to come on and talk about the pop culture influences that have shaped their lives from the past and from the present. Once again, I'm host and producer Danielle Terciano, and a lot of times I say this podcast isn't really about me, but you know what? Today, this podcast is a little bit about me, because when I was growing up, both Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air were big influences on my life. Today's guest is a big part of both remakes. That's right. I'm talking to actor Simone Joy Jones. She plays Tanya Crandall in the 2024 version of Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. She also plays Lisa Wilkes on Bel-Air, which is Peacock's drama version of The Fresh Prince. But she's not just here to talk about those two projects. Of course, we're going to get into her past pop culture influence as well, which, spoiler alert, is one we've talked about before and very, very recently. But it's so important to pop culture history that I was willing to talk about it again. To learn what that is, you're just going to have to keep listening. Well, I'm super excited to have you on today. I want to talk a little bit first about, the two, I feel like you're having a big year this year, and like the two big projects, Bel-Air and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, like they had such an importance for me when I was younger. So these new iterations, I think, are really cool. I don't imagine you maybe had the same attachment to them that I did. So I do want to talk a little bit about, like, as you know, this is a lot of this podcast is nostalgia. So we're going to get to your nostalgic influence, but with these projects, was that in play for you? Like, how much when you took them, were you like, oh my God, I love the original, I want to do something, put my stamp on it?
That was definitely for Bel-Air. Bel-Air I had watched growing up as a kid. Will Smith is a huge hero for me. All of his music and movies were just very staples in my household. But it was the complete opposite with Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. I had never seen it before. And all of the girls, when I said that I had booked it, like the girls, my fashion girls, they were like, "Are you kidding me? How have you not seen that? That's the most iconic movie I've ever seen." But that one, I really had to find my own footing with that. And I took it as a blessing that I hadn't seen it, so I could kind of give my own take to it. But yeah, watching that for the first time was a treat.
I think also maybe if you don't have the attachment, you have more freedom. You feel like you can do, you don't have to be like, oh, well, I have it in my head how this person delivered this line. Like, even right on top of that, Rose, like, it's an iconic line. It's still on t-shirts. It stayed in the new movie. And like, if I were you, I wouldn't want to be beholden to how Christina did it.
Exactly. I always think we have the perfect version. That one already exists. And so now we're doing a different version. Anything to try to replicate something that is so near and dear to us is going to be the worst thing ever. So the best thing that we can do is make it our own.
And also, I would say same thing for Bel-Air too, just because when I look at, first of all, I think you have a little bit more right off the bat, knowing this one is a drama. You have that right off the bat, like, okay, we know tonally we're going to be doing something different. But I would also say that even more than Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, I feel like the way that you tell that story of like this affluent Black family today, culturally, politically, like socioeconomically, is just so different from, I can't believe I was saying this, but like 30 years ago in the 90s.
I know. Oh my gosh, that's so nuts. Wow. I'm just like, wow, time keeps going. Never stops.
I know, and we will get into Bel-Air a little bit deeper in a minute. But I used the word nostalgia a second ago, and I was like, your influence. But correct me if I'm wrong. I heard a big influence for you was Beyonce, and to say nostalgic about Beyonce seems wrong, because it's like she's not just in the past.
Right. She constantly reinvents herself. But I guess nostalgia for the first time, I guess for me, a nostalgic moment with Beyonce. Wait, did you ask?
Well, I was going to ask you, if you could set that up. Like, I always like to ask everybody to set that scene of first time you encountered, and in this case, Beyonce, whether it was her music, a specific song, music video, like set up the moment where you kind of fell in love with her, and, where you were in your time, and then what that piece of her catalog was?
Yes. Oh my goodness. I feel like I was just always a fan of Destiny's Child. Like I remember driving and seeing like billboards of them like posing together, and we would hear them on the radio, and it would just always be such a good time. But the moment I really just was like, oh, Beyonce is my everything was when I saw, I think it was um what's the one? Beauty Hurts? Beauty Hurts?
Pretty Hurts is I think
Oh,
what you're thinking of,
yes,
but
yes.
Pretty Hurts was after.
I
So
know.
so what just take me through that through line for a second before you get into Pretty Hurts, just in terms of like you saw them as Destiny's Child, like were you were sort of into it, and then what was it about Pretty Hurts that made that the thing?
Okay. I think I found a through line. So always Destiny's Child, like growing up, I was just like wanted to be Beyonce, I always had like girls and we were always flanking, we were always walking. Like that was such an influence for me. Okay, I will say the first time I was like, oh my gosh, was Irreplaceable, the video. Where I was like, oh my gosh, she's just gorgeous. I love this song. I can't stop singing it. That is the kind of music that I would want to make. She's so cool. But then Pretty Hurts, I feel like becoming more of an adult and more of a director in the creative that I wanted to
Hmm.
be. I just felt the 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 storytelling in all of that. The self-titled album was so potent and so like in her creative control that I was just like, oh, she's unmatched. She's my favorite for all of the reasons and not just because she's the best in her field.
So that is something I wanted to talk about because I find it really interesting when one artist, like as an actor, you're not just pulling from other actors. Like in this case, you're saying like, well, Beyonce, who, I mean, yes, she is an actor. She has, you could argue even in music videos, you're acting, but certainly she has done more traditional projects. But that was part of my question was also just when you love the music and the artist, what comes first for you?
Hmm. I feel like the music always comes first because I feel like that's probably what reaches me first.
Okay.
And then I'll be like, well, who is the source of this? I feel like that's my way in. Yeah.
It sounds terrible to ask this. I'm going to ask it anyway. How old were you when you were doing the like, were Destiny's Child, were flanking?
Probably, I would say fifth, sixth grade.
Okay.
What are
So
you like?
young. Because to me, I think you also immerse yourself in anything at that age. So that's like what, 11, 12. I feel like you are absorbing it at a certain level, right? Like one thing that I think about with the music that I grew up listening to is I didn't understand a lot of it necessarily. Like I had no reference point. People are singing about love and you're 11 and it's like, well, I didn't experience that yet. So I'm taking your word for it. And like maybe some of these songs are more fairy tale and maybe some of them are more like cautionary tale. And so
Yeah.
what I'm also curious about is like how much when you love the music first and then you get to know the artist, how much of it is you're listening to the music as like a guideline for what you think your life, your relationships, your friendships, whatever situation they're singing about could be.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like I grew up listening to so much music. There was a lot of music in my household. We were always watching Michael Jackson, listening to Michael Jackson, and I was a big, my parents were big 70s, 80s connoisseurs of the music. So we were always sitting down talking about the music, and I did my first Broadway show at 9. So I was always working within an artistic community and dissecting words and what they mean. So I don't know if I'm like the typical 10-year-old. I was
That's a
always,
good point.
yeah, I was just constantly absorbing and seeing muses and how I wanted that to affect my work really young. Um, so yeah, so I feel like that informed a lot of how I view the world and how I see the world. And when you're a kid, I feel like sonically what feels good reaches you first rather than what it means. I remember hearing music now with like that was very explicit, but I didn't understand what it meant. So I was just like, that's just a fun, cool song. And then I was like, Oh my God, I did not know that that meant that. So
Right.
in that way, what only reaches you of your understanding, I feel like kind of grabbed me. And I feel like what constantly grabbed me about Beyonce's music is her empowerment of her being like, stop, or I have my own money, or I know my own things, and you can't tell me what's real because I know what's real.
So I grew up late 80s, 90s into the aughts, listening to a lot of the opposite of that. It was a lot of like the pop music machine, like the Britneys, the Christina Aguileras, like they're good at what they do, but there was a
Mhm.
very specific branding and a specific message around them. And so it maybe was, at least in the early stages before they could have, I would argue Britney didn't have control obviously for a long time, but like the Pinks of the world, the Christina Aguileras, even the Mariah Careys of the world, like they
The
didn't have,
Belters,
yeah,
yes.
like they didn't have the control in the beginning. And then as they got more popular slash famous slash rich, like they were able to control what they were putting out in a different way. And I would say, I would argue the same of Beyonce, but I would argue that like whatever it was, her team, her own innate, I know what I want to do with my message. Like, I feel like she had a very good trajectory from the beginning of like, I'm not putting out messages that are bad for young girls to listen to. And so that's what I wanted to talk with you about a little bit as well. Like, if there was a quote unquote anthem, not necessarily like an anthemic music choice that she made, but something that you chose out of her catalog that you felt like this was my anthem, like this was a rally for how I should live my life.
Yes. From Beyonce's catalog.
Yeah. I
Nice.
mean, honestly, if there's something else you want to call out, sure, but I mean,
These are the best questions ever. I'm thinking about the first thing that popped into my head was Listen, but I know that was from the Dreamgirls soundtrack.
I mean, it's okay. I mean, it doesn't have to always be an original.
That's true. That's true. Wait, hold on. Okay, listen. But I also, honestly, irreplaceable. Like, just the anthem of, like, you must not know about me. Like, you must not understand what I give because once I'm gone, I'm truly gone. And I know if you don't know. So I feel like that one for me.
Do you feel like that is something that helps you in your acting in either like getting you mentally ready to step into auditions and roles, or in any way do you use, maybe not that song specifically, but like her catalog, some of her other stuff as role, like kind of like a playlist for a particular character?
Hmm. I definitely have a Lisa playlist. I definitely like make playlists for all of my characters. Um, I use music as kind of like world building, but not as like a hype thing before I start. I feel like that's a little bit distracting when
Mm,
I'm more in the mind of a character. I kind of just want their thoughts, or I'm thinking about like what camera, da, 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 da. So it's a little bit more technical. But like in the morning is when I'm like listening to music the most.
okay. When you just said you have a Lisa playlist,
Yeah.
can you share what's on it? I mean, is it all
Yes.
modern stuff, or do you ever go back to like what was the original, like stuff from the original show?
Ooh. Honestly, I have not done that, but my Lisa Wilkes playlist um is a lot of the stuff that just I feel like that she would listen to or that kind of relate to her life. Like Touch the Sky, like
Mm.
when I for Kanye West,
Hmm.
like right when she first meets Will, I feel like everything is just like on top of the world. I have like, you know, what do I have? I just have like a lot of what's it called? Oh, Teleport to Me, which made it into the show, which I love. It's like the song when they first kiss, which I love. I have Alex Molly, who is a newer artist for Started Up.
Nice.
Yeah, so I feel like it's a very High Five is one of the older songs. Like she's playing Hard to Get.
Yeah, you said older, and my heart just stopped a little. I was like,
Oh
yeah,
my
here's
goodness.
where I show my age, but you're not wrong.
Right. Well, not in the last 20 years, I would
Right,
say.
right, exactly. I was like, but I remember it. So,
Right, exactly, exactly.
and so, I mean, that's all like character building stuff. I think about this time we don't spend with Lisa on screen when she's training, especially in season 3. Like
Yes.
she a couple of times says like, hey, like I'm not going to be able to do something. I have to be in training mode.
Yeah.
And that the only exercise I'm ever willing to do is swimming, but I can't swim if I don't have music because I'm just like, what is happening in the world? Like I need
Yes.
something to motivate me. Do you do that? Do you separate like songs for, like as you said, when she meets Will, like songs for their relationship versus songs for, what she's going through at training versus songs for, especially at the end of season 3 when she's struggling with what happened to Amira, or is it more one big character piece?
It's definitely, I keep adding to it as I go. And so if there's something in the script that I'm like, oh, sonically, there's something that matches this perfectly. So absolutely, there's like a training song in there. There's something that like gets her going. I feel like for me, when I'm going through something, sometimes I kind of let myself go through it.
Hmm.
I feel like younger me would have music playing all the time, but it's kind of to drown out thoughts. And so I have Lisa a little bit more mature and being able to just kind of go through it. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I have anything that matches that one because she just has to be so stable in the middle of just such
Yeah.
chaotic characters, especially in her life. I'll like literally get a script and I'm like, dang, she's
Oh,
got to hit the rock again.
I mean, yes, but also I feel like
I love
it's a really interesting, I think, look at like the different ways that we expect people in our lives to act. Like as you just said, like she has to be the rock, but does she? Like she should be allowed to not be. And
yeah.
that's what I like. It was nice for me at the end of season 3 to finally see like her dad kind of step up for her, and like remains to be seen, I guess, how true it is when he says like anything you need, if I'll be there and things like that. But at the same time, like she's not the addict. She's not the one who
Right.
almost died,
They're both together,
but
they're
what
both
she went through is still a trauma.
right.
It's just funny when you said too, like younger you would have tried to drown it out. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about when I'm swimming. Like my inner thoughts when I'm swimming are like, I don't want to be exercising. Why am I doing this? Like, get me out of the pool.
Literally. Literally. I feel
Okay.
that when I'm working out, I'm just like, I just gotta get through this.
I do want to go back to Beyonce for a second.
Please.
Let's talk
Always.
about the like Beyonce as the performer
Mhm.
concert experience. Have you gone to a lot of shows? What is that? How is that different for you than when you're, obviously like it's live and it's that part is different, but do you feel like you get a different appreciation, or do you feel like there are different connection points to different songs when you see them live versus when you were just listening to them wherever you were on your own with that album?
Absolutely. I absolutely think she adds an element of herself and the way that she wants you to experience it. The only concert that I've been to of Beyonce's is the Renaissance.
Hmm.
And to see what set choices she made, what little monologue excerpts she put before and after songs, the way the choreography interacted with the music as well as the lights, and then to find out later that she handpicked all of that and was so involved. I've always loved her involvement in her own creative process, which is rare. And because it's a lot, because performing itself is a lot. And so to hand off to people who that's their whole life is huge. But I definitely see the just like the whole she creates an atmosphere with her music. And that's something that I really love.
I mean, it is interesting too, I think, the way that you just explained, how much she's actually doing.
Mhm.
Because to me, I think that's who I would want to, if I was in a creative field like that, that's who I would be. Like, I would need to have my hands in all of it because it's
Yeah.
my image, it's my message, but it
Yeah.
is so much extra work and maybe extra pressure. And I'm curious how you absorb that in terms of like your own artistry as an actor. Do you then see, okay, there are moments where you want to start writing, you want to start directing, you want to start producing to kind of be able to control that narrative further, kind of the way that she has.
Absolutely. I mean, I have an album coming out soon, and
Not like a hint or anything that I was
I
trying to get you
know,
to
my
plug.
God. Yeah, but I'm in all of the mixing sessions, and I'm in every session, and there's nothing there's I am behind, and I approve every single note that's on this album. There's nothing that which is sometimes a little annoying, I'm sure. They're like, oh, here comes another mix. I'm like, what's that sound at 30 seconds that I just feel like it has a little bit of an echo? You know what I mean? So
Yes.
those things make me feel more at home when I've heard that Beyonce has done them, because it makes me feel like, oh, I'm not crazy, even though people may try to make you feel like you're doing too much.
Mm.
That this is something that represents me wholly. There's a lot of things in Bel-Air that I can't control, and right, and a lot of it is everybody's story and not just mine. And I feel like the music that I put out is very much my story, and it's a huge reflection of who I am and me. And so I feel like it's very natural to be behind every element of it, and I'm very proud of it. And even when I grow into new things, I feel like the person I was before really backed every second of that project.
You didn't say the name of the album. You have to say the name of the album.
It's called Magnet.
Nice. And how much of it is, you just said obviously it's all you, but how much of it is pulled from personal experiences, professional experiences? Like, as you were talking about creating playlists for characters, do you then also create songs based on your experience playing characters?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like these songs are just wildly personal. And I feel like a lot of my songs are an expansion of a moment. Like, there's not so much stories of this, of just more of like a moment of how something made me feel, and something, whether it was good or bad, it's just something that's so potent that grew into sounds and lyrics. And something, it's like the things that you sit down with your girls and they heard you talk about it for the eighth time. Like, that's what a song is. And because a song takes so much time, it feels like you just have a conversation with yourself and with that moment, and what that moment meant to you, whether it's right or it's wrong. Um, yeah, yeah. So I feel like and it manifests in different ways, whether it's like jazz fusion
Mm.
or it's a little housey. They're all in different genres, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah. And what is the juggling process like? Because I don't exactly know your film schedule, but like having a big movie earlier this year, having the third season of the show, and also now, as you were just talking about, like how involved you are in every
Yeah.
aspect of the production of the album. Are you doing everything at once? And how are you turning one part of you off to turn the other part of you on?
Well, one, I'm a person who, if I had to get rid of one of the things that made me function as a person, it would be sleep. Because
Okay.
because I'm like, I don't need it. If I could just keep going and do everything, then I would definitely do that. But I feel like because these are very high effort physically, but not emotionally, because I just really do love these projects and performing at such a high level and acting. Um, there are people who make sure that a lot of the little things are taken care of. So I'm super, super blessed, and that helps me. Like, everybody who works on a set, everyone is so important to me. I know everybody's name because everyone has a job that works and serves um in the movie in such a beautiful way. And I'm so thankful that they make my job a lot easier. So like whenever I need water, or if I feel like I'm like just confused about something, someone's always there to be like, how can I help? And so I feel like it would be lost on me, or kind of naive, to be like, oh yeah, I do everything myself. Like, no, I definitely don't. So
Right.
I feel like that is a big help, like just, everyone who serves the story. Um, but and yeah, so I feel like that's a big one, the help.
Okay. Okay. I mean, it is a big one. I'm still a little stuck on the sleep because I do feel like that's the one thing that I think when everybody is doing as much as you are doing, like you need the most of, because you want to be refreshed. You want to still feel that passion and that love. And like, I don't know, at a certain point, if you're running on too much adrenaline, I don't know that you are really like present to enjoy what you're experiencing.
That is true. That is true. Well, I think having a schedule like mine, um, it's just wow. I don't know. I just feel like when I do sleep, I'm like very like, all right, I'm locked in for these
Yeah.
7 hours, you know? But when I get up, I definitely use just all of those awake hours to make it count. And I also, when I'm in work mode, just I think about the things that serve me. So like phone time or time that I feel like I'm wasting time, I try to
Mhm.
cut that to make sure that I amplify my voice in the world and what I can do in the world. So I am also just very aware of time spent.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, that's something I'm very great at time management, I would say.
That's good. I think maybe also we're not stopping around, stopping and necessarily thinking about like, well, how much sleep am I getting and how much am I doing of X, Y, or Z? But like, if you can stop yourself in the moment of like, oh, I'm just scrolling through TikTok and now I've
Right.
been doing this for 20 minutes and why was I doing this? And you can
Yes.
acknowledge it and be self-aware and change it. That's
Hmm.
really good and impressive and important because I feel like I'll speak for myself. Like I do the opposite a lot of the times. I'm like, I need to turn my brain off for a few minutes. And then I
Hmm.
will go and I will like scroll through dog accounts on Instagram. But then
Yeah,
it's 2 hours later and I'm still doing it. And it's like, I didn't need to be doing that for 2 hours. I could have
right.
stopped at 10 minutes.
I'm not exempt from that, and that's why I fill my schedule.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Okay.
other than that, I will literally be at home looking at dogs too because they're so cute. Literally.
Can I be honest with you? That was the one thing in Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead in your version where I was like, where's the dog? They
I
got rid of the dog.
know.
How dare they? Like I was like primed to be concerned about certain updates that they made, and that was not one that I thought I would have to worry about. And then I was like, they got rid of the dog. How dare they?
Oh my gosh. I feel like that because we filmed right before the strike. We didn't
Mm.
have any extra days. So I feel like the dog, all due respect, would be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I don't think we would have survived if we had a dog on set, I'm not gonna lie.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think most places, when I was a journalist, I did, I mean, I love dogs in general, but when I was a journalist, I wrote a lot about how animals are used in productions, especially comparatively, like historically, where, if a dog was being trained for something specific, like Lassie, it was a star versus some shows would just like want it for color and it would like sit on the couch in the background and not do anything. And I
Mhm.
think that those two, like they're diametrically opposed for how you use them, but no matter what, they're going to have a mind of their own. And like if
Yeah,
you just want the dog in the background of the shot, it might not stay anyway.
right,
So yeah, I think you probably are onto something, and I think that was probably a good call from production, knowing the constraints.
right.
Still, I was a little sad.
I know, I know. The
Okay.
crows were our dog.
Well, and also, I would say you did make up for it with the ending because that was my
I,
also, not to spoil it for everybody, although also you should have seen it by now. Like when I was younger, I always wondered, like they leave the original on the question of like what happened to the babysitter and it's played as a joke. And I'm like, no, there's a whole separate movie where like cops are like trying to identify this woman and whatever, right? And at least
literally.
in this movie, they answer it. And I was like, I love that scene. I love how like the mom is like with them and on their side. I was like, that was smart. Good work.
The drinking of like, oof, y'all did the right thing. That made me crack up when that is something about the script that I just really adored, that I was laughing while I was reading it. And there's some things where you're like, oh, okay, when that actor comes, it's gonna be really funny. There's stuff like that. There's so many variables with this. I was truly laughing when I was reading it because at first I was like, guys, I don't know if I want to do another reimagining. I'm a little nervous. You know what I mean? But then
Yeah.
the script was so great. And I was like, honestly, the story is something that I am totally behind. And let's do it.
And you mentioned at the start of this, like your friends who are into fashion were really like they were aware of the original.
Oh, yeah.
What was the verdict from everyone with the new one? That
They
they were
really
behind the
did
fashion?
like it. Yes, they
Okay.
really did like it. And I thought it was just really cool because we've had some great motifs. So everything in the show was thrifted. Everything
Oh,
in the movie was thrifted.
that's cool.
Yes. So there was nothing bought, especially for my character, except for Nicole's character.
That makes
Uh,
sense.
Yes, all of hers were like suits, but everything of mine was a thrifted outfit. So it's kind of funky. It has cool shape to it. They're like, it's like what a kid would imagine an adult workplace would be like, especially who works in fashion, but somebody who kind of has an eye for it, you know?
Right.
So in that way, I just thought it was super creative and fun and cool. And in that way, it gathered the spirit of the original without trying to be the original.
Yeah. I mean, I think you also kind of hit the nail on the head. Like she has an eye for it because in the first film, it always felt like she was like trying it out. Like she would sketch or like draw in magazines. But even when you get to the end of the movie, she hasn't really been sold. It felt to
Mhm.
me like I'm making this her career. Just maybe it was the director's choice of the way she answered Rose. But like in this movie, it was very obvious no, Tanya wants to do this and she's going to take that offer and she's going to like now this is going to be her career. And in 20 years they'll remake it again and you'll play Rose and it'll be like full circle.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing. I had not even thought about that possibility. That's beautiful.
I mean,
That's
they're going to have to. And whenever you're doing a remake, whether it's Bel-Air, whether it is Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, whether it's like one of the million other ones that we're doing in Hollywood, like it's fashion and it's technology to me that are making the difference, not
yes.
just in how you're making the movie, but also like in how you're using them in the movie. Like in obviously first Don't Tell Mom Babysitter's Dead, that fax machine was so important and ridiculous. And that doesn't make sense in today. And so of course you don't have that moment. But there are other ways to kind of bring that in. And I mean, obviously in Bel-Air too, like the way they text each other is so important because it's in the way that they're like on live is so important on social because of how people live their lives. But I am curious if there was anything you felt like personally attached to that you wanted to see brought in that way, in either a runner of tech from the original series to the new, or just something from your own life that you're like, this is how I use it. This is how it would be realistic for my character.
Hmm. I feel like both projects did a really great job. The only thing that I was like, I really want to happen and did happen was the QED reports, like that ridiculous stack of QED reports. And because I was like, I hope they don't make it emails. I hope they don't like,
But it
do
would be emails. That's
it
what's so
totally.
crazy. And like that's what I mean when you think about how to update some of these projects, it's like some of it just doesn't translate the same because of the way we've changed how we live our lives. Like,
Exactly. And so having that awareness, Chuck literally was like, had the other character be like, oh, I digitized all of the QED
mhm.
reports. Yes, so now we have this ridiculous stack. And because it's a beautiful nod to the original, but like just bringing it back to like, all right, like what are we doing with a stack of literally 500 papers that I would have to go through? It doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't. But like this is how, when I even a few years ago in print journalism, actually I can't say that they're not still doing this. Pre-pandemic, when I worked for Variety, we put out a magazine. The way that we would put out the magazine with having everybody sign off on pages, you would literally print out the pages and take them around the newsroom for people to physically sign off. So every time a change was made, you'd reprint the page, have another person sign, and you would have stacks and stacks. And I was like, this is so bad for the environment, but also I don't like physical paperwork at all. And so it like used to just really get at me because then I was a senior editor. I would have a stack of paper on my desk at the end. And I'm like, I don't want this. This is an insane thing to do.
Right.
And then during the pandemic, obviously, we couldn't do that because we were all working from home. And I ended up leaving the job before everybody went back to the office after the pandemic. But I was like, I really hope that if nothing else, they learned from the pandemic to stop printing out a million pieces of paper because it was exactly that. I used to have flashbacks to like, is this our version of the QED report? Yeah,
Right. Oh my God, that's so funny. Literally.
it's sad, but that's okay.
There's something
Um,
about physical stuff, but at the same time, it's like, all right, we can progress.
yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you just have to. And I honestly think that's what's so cool about these shows too. Just like there's still a very special place in my heart for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but I can like New Bel-Air alongside of it because it's not a
Oh,
carbon copy. It's not, trying to like do something because the original they said no longer is valid. It is its own thing. And it is like very much a modern version of what, you know, what they did back in the day with all of the sensibilities. And also, like, let's face it, some of the things that were quote unquote antics in the original, like if you really stop and think about it, are kind of serious and we should take them seriously. So
Absolutely.
I do want to look at that from like your perspective as Lisa, in terms of, you mentioned it earlier, like some of the things that people get up to around her, and she is a very grounding force. How does that feel as an actor though? Like, are there moments where you kind of wish she could be more involved in the quote unquote wacky or like quote unquote bigger than normal things?
Yes, I mean there are really cool. I mean, I love to play a villain. I love to just have that work that you could just really chew on. Um, so I think there's definitely just room for her to grow. I don't even
Mm.
think that's and just I love how the story kind of I love sorry. I'm gonna start that. I was like
Sure.
thinking of things at one
I do the
time.
same thing all the time.
And I'm like, and then you know that little boy that's like, and then and we that's literally me.
Yes.
Okay. I love how the writers can expand a personality in the way that we don't see this person as a good guy, we don't see this person as a bad guy, we don't see the person as a good girl. There's always levels and layers and nuance to people. So I feel like in this season, people are seeing that Will is kind of an asshole and he just kind of a boy who kind of can take what he can get. You know, he's trying to get away with what he can get away with, and that's life. And I feel like, especially on the internet, ooh, hot take, I feel like we look at people in one way and we judge them in one way, and
Mm.
then we try to base their whole career off of like one thing. And I just feel like that's not how we operate at all.
Right. Have you had a second to look at how people have responded to the last two episodes of season three?
So,
Oh, okay. I haven't either. The only reason I ask is because you brought up the internet, but also because in talking about Will in that moment, like
which
it
one?
is, there are, I feel like a lot, there's a lot of like, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like when I watch Lisa and Will together, there seems to be a little like a push and pull. Like she knows that maybe she shouldn't be with him because he is very center of the universe and like demanding of her emotional time and physical time, but she actually is drawn to him and things like that. And but I do feel in the final, not necessarily the finale because that wasn't really focused on them, but in that second to last episode, especially when people realize like, okay, she had a trauma too, I do feel like there's more work to like see her than there had been maybe in some previous episodes.
Yes. What is the what are you talking about in the
After Amira overdoses in the pool, and there, I feel like in the second to last episode, there are moments where, especially maybe it is me reading into Will's reactions, but when they're in that group setting together and they are all talking about like Amira, but they
like
are
that
also, I feel like
role?
holding Lisa in a different way than they had been before.
Right, where we're at the table and he's like, but black says though. And we're like, are you kidding?
That's true. That wasn't a great moment.
I was like, what is going on with you? Like,
No, yeah, maybe I was reading into something that wasn't really, I mean, it certainly wasn't the focus.
no, absolutely. I think there's also just so much going on, which I also love how this is a very ensemble show.
Hmm.
You know, I feel like the original is just based on Will and his experience, and then just to branch out and see everybody's experience is really, really cool. But I feel like 9 and 10 are really cool instances where the truth is just not one thing. Like there is a world where Will is right. Like, hey, I know this is going on, but also for our future and for everything, we do need to focus. And I feel like Lisa and Carlton are right of like, can you hold space for this for a second? You know? And there's many examples of that in this episodes, but just I just think it's really cool how you play out, and it just depends on who you are and how what you think of each character, depending on like who you would side with.
Yes.
You know, but I think everyone's right a lot of the times when they argue about it. I think everybody's right.
Well, but it is also true. Like you are projecting either what you already believe a lot of the times onto what you're watching, or like what you hope for. Like in like when I was literally trying to picture in those moments of like, we're talking about Amira, but we've acknowledged that Lisa went through a trauma too, and her dad is there and he is saying, I'm sorry, I'm going to do better, not in those exact words, whatever. And like when I watched Will embrace Lisa, I'm hoping, okay, he's seeing her, he's understanding what she's going through.
Yeah.
He's not just trying to cop a feel, you know what I mean? Or like just trying to like get a little boyfriend moment in there. Like, but who knows if that's really true or if that's just what I want to see. Or I mean, even I would argue, even in the finale, like there's, a great interaction with Jamal Hill. And I was just like, well, that's cool. Like she's getting this vote of confidence in a way to like keep going and persevere through all of this, but also, is that really what she wants? And is that like the message she should be internalizing? Because sometimes it is okay to stop,
Right.
like sometimes like you don't have to get back on the horse, or in this case, in the pool right away.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking of a point going before. I feel like there's a lot of kind of tension with Lisa and Will with fans because in just we're interacting with Will in a whole new way.
Mhm.
We're having like a couple of girls and he has life going on rather than all of the girls in a little bit of life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Everyone's like, why the hell are we still, like trying to work through something? But in real life, you work through things with the people that you love and that you want. Yeah, and I really loved how they kind of brought back her swimming because that was something after season 2, I was like, we had this huge pride on how Lisa has a life outside of Will, and it kind of fizzled. And so they were such great listeners, and they literally were like just brought in a whole life for her and just outside of Will, which was just really cool. And to bring him into it rather than um always her attaching that way. So, and meeting Jamal Hill was just really, really great, and having somebody just um, like just to talk to in that way, like a hero for her, is
Yeah.
really cool. Like a hero for a character who's not like Will or Carlton, be introduced. I was like, that's huge. That's super, super huge.
Yeah. You talked a minute ago, obviously, just about the family aspect and like the life outside. The life outside of Will, I'm gonna just say this, and I'm sure people will now start yelling at me because that's what happens. But like, it doesn't seem that great either. Like she's responsible for so much. And again, like at the end of the season, maybe that'll turn around. But it just feels like there is so much on her plate that we don't physically see. Like we
Yeah.
hear about it, but I think sometimes you can downplay how serious it is, downplay how much it is in terms of like taxing when you don't see it. And I'm curious if there were scenes that they cut,
Ooh.
like stuff where we saw you more with your brother or your dad, or like the stuff that we hear you talk about.
Yeah.
Was there more to it that they cut, or was that all stuff that you just had to like kind of envision as backstory and as like side story?
Yeah, that's all something that I had to like kind of write and flesh through what it meant to me because, it's just these kind of just little moments that she brings into the pool settings or the talking or the golf cart, and the fact that they manifest so much means that they're really, really big for her. And, when you're 17, everything feels huge, even if they are small, like everything is your whole life. Um, but but I was also very glad to have some fun. Like we had some dates this summer, which I was like, guys, like we need some fun. Like having a girlfriend and having a boyfriend is just so fun, and it's and so exciting because it's always the first times are such really big ones. And so I really fought for those
Hmm.
fun too, because I'm like, I know this is a drama, but at the same time, where do they find their peace and their
Hmm.
fun? And I would love it for it to be in each other. And I feel like a lot of his really fun and safe moments are with Lisa, and I'm really happy about that.
So, or would you say you're rooting for Will and Lisa?
Mm.
Okay, let me rephrase it. All right. If you are not currently rooting for them as is, like what do
Yeah.
you think they need to do to kind of be the at the end of the show they're still standing couple?
Whoa, that's a good one. I would like for them maybe to take I would really like, because I feel like they've known how to do stuff in the hard times, and I feel like a lot of stuff for them is really, really hard. I would like to see them, one, have more fun, and see how much they really do like each other in the fun times, because I feel like a lot of it is trauma bonding too, where they're just kind of holding on to each other and they're like, this works.
Hmm.
And I would also like for them to just be friends in a really cool way. Like, I feel like they've always been lovers, and I don't know how much we've really delved into them being friends in the sense of like just laughing and hanging out rather than being a tool for each other's digging out of a hole, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because like thinking about how the show started, there was like a tease of kind of a love triangle because of the past with Carlton.
Right.
Then there
Totally.
was like the tease of it because of Jackie. But like,
But it was never pursued both way, either way.
right, which is I think good because I'm not advocating for more of that storytelling. But I think
I
like
was
that
like,
I mean, it has its time and place, but I'm like, this is a little bit more, as you used the word before, mature than that. Um, but in saying that and in thinking of the show in those maybe reductive terms, in the sense of like maybe I thought it was going to go that way and then it didn't. I think that does speak to what you were saying about trying the friendship. Like we're all maybe trained as viewers to expect male and female characters are just coupling up all the time, but like it's okay if that's not necessarily what's happening. I don't know how that would work now when like he is clearly, I feel like never gonna let her go, not in like a creepy way, not in like a stalker, that type of drama way, but I do think that is interesting. Or I think like even if it's correct me if you disagree, but like even if it's not Will and Lisa, like seeing more of Lisa and Carlton's friendship, I think would be cool because I think like he certainly is going to need someone to lean on, depending on how much of a time jump there is between seasons because of Amira being gone and just like struggling in general.
yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I just totally, I feel like there's so much that we assume about them, and their chemistry, I feel like, is so potent. And I feel like I want to see more of that. Why? Like, why can't they stay away from each other? Why won't he go to Jackie? Why is she risking a huge family dynamic to be with a cousin? Like, I want to see, I feel like there is that in our relationship and our time on screen when we do have it, but because there's so many storylines having to happen, I feel like it's more of an undercurrent where I would love to see next season, God willing.
Mhm. I was
Um,
going, that's always one of my questions is what
I
is your
know,
hope? Yeah.
I know, God willing, that they would really take it there, and then just to take it there for it to all unravel, but we know that we gave it everything rather than like seeing a little bit and they've just like, no, I want to like run it into the ground. Run it into the ground or run it into the sky. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I am always for running things into the ground,
Yeah.
exploding things. I'm a chaos agent.
No.
I watch rom-coms and root for them to break up normally. So like you're speaking my language, but I also am curious about if you've thought about, and maybe this is too soon, but if you've thought about like whatever Will is going through right now, because at the end of season 3, like him being taken, like he's going to come back with some trauma. You have to imagine she has trauma. I'm sorry to bring this to traumatic talk, but
No, it's a
like
drama.
I do, one of the things I do like to talk about with actors, especially, is like when that's an undercurrent of a character, but it is not the point of the show. Like it's not The Handmaid's Tale. We're not living in that space the whole time. How do you feel like Lisa and I will be better at dealing with Will's trauma than Will has been with dealing with hers, or would be with his own?
Huh. I feel like I feel like Will is better this season at dealing with other things, because in this, like, the eighth and 10th episode, we see him really like listen. And I feel like that's the first time we've seen him not be like, you good? All right, have a good time, you know? Like at the golf carts, he's like, no, no, no. I see something's wrong. Tell me. On the couch, he was like, you
Hmm.
have tell me. And I feel like that's something that is generalized that girls do. If you be like, no, he's supposed to know. And I feel like there is an
Mm,
element of that where I'm like that she is annoyed because he's supposed to know. But there are a lot of things that are like we as an audience know, but if you really break down script wise, like he hasn't heard any of that. Um, so and yeah, I just want to see how they deal with that. And I don't know how well Lisa is equipped now that she has learned to have a little bit more of a bark and a more of a bite to her. I feel like she's just been like a very sweet, good girl. And so I would love to see her be a little bit bad for everybody. Like I
mm,
would love to see her blow up people's lives. I'm gonna give that to
nice.
the writers. I'm gonna be like, let Lisa like be the agent of actual chaos.
Right. I mean, you can't go too far left because like then it would be out of character, I think.
That's true. That absolutely.
But I mean, I think there are probably ways where like even unintentionally that can happen and that can be a really fun dynamic change for a new season. I have to ask about nationals because like and I had this like flashback to when I used to cover Glee and they were constantly talking about like that the end goal of like the thing that they're training for and like it became a running joke. We don't see it, obviously, like some things go awry.
Right.
How much do you actually spend tr you training slash like in the water yourself for the chance that like we might see that someday? We might see her in this major race and you have to like look legit, like Olympian level.
There was a huge um first season. I was just like I literally got cast off of coming off of an injury where I was on bed
Ooh.
rest for 3 months. My knee literally came out of its socket. So I literally started Bel-Air in a way where I couldn't work out. I was just completely in a whole different space. And so season two was just like kind of getting like there was like a roller skating scene where I'm on like I have to sit down and I'm like being pushed because I literally couldn't move my legs. Literally,
I'm
I don't know,
sorry I laughed, but that also
hilarious.
is my dream. I don't want to be on skates. Somebody push me. Like let's fake it. You know what I mean? Like you have insurance as a production, but also like you don't want to risk your actor getting injured. Let's fake it.
Exactly. They were like, Simone, sit down. And I'm just not that person. And it was like a lot. But so I think season three really was something where I was like, okay, I really want to serve Lisa. I feel like when on your off time, you are you are representing a character and it has to make sense. And so I definitely like I've always been an athlete my whole life. And I love that we get to have a character with like broad shoulders and long arms and muscles and like just somebody who's really strong rather than somebody who is I feel like a lot of our ingenues are just the most daintiest people. And I thought that was really cool. Like somebody who's like when you train, you have to push yourself and take care of yourself. And when you look at Olympians, they're strong. And that I just think that's so cute, cool. And so um yeah, that was just so fun to dive into and to make sure that I was aligned with somebody when you watch her, you understand that she has been putting in the work, that she does represent somebody who works on herself and serves her story, especially how much that that's a part of her. So I did make sure I got my like just workouts in and make sure I understood like what it means and like just having makeup sometimes have a little
Mm.
bit of bag or something that she's tired, you know, making sure we storytell in a lot of the ways that make sense.
Yeah. Or what, I mean, I'm sorry, but when Will showed up with that like disgusting looking juice, that smoothie, I was like, that says it all. That's what you do when you're training. And that looks gross. And I'm sorry for all of you.
That was so nasty.
Yeah.
I was like, you drink that. He was like, I
I mean,
won't.
listen, I know that that's what athletes do. I mean, non-athletes do that. I have friends that juice. I mean, during the pandemic, we received a lot of free, I don't know if I should plug this, but like free kitchenware from a lot of events were no longer obviously happening. And so the budgets were kind of redirected to helping promote in other ways. And a lot of studios and networks were like, we're going to send you things so that you can like get through this pandemic and make food at home and like just also remember how nice we are and write about our shows type of thing. And so we got a lot of those blenders and a lot of those like citrus juicer things, and I gave them to all my friends who are healthy eaters, but I was just like, I'm sorry, I don't see this as being an incentive for me to wake up early and train.
I'm like, whatever serves you in your life, you got to go ahead and do that, darling.
Hmm. Hmm. All right, so you already kind of teased like what you hope for season 4 should it come through. On a broader level, I mean, you kind of made a joke about this earlier, but I'm curious if it is true. Like, where do you stand in terms of more of these remakes? Like, are there more characters from either your childhood or just pop culture history in general that you do feel like you want to see reimagined in these ways that maybe you would even want to be a part of?
You want to know my truth?
Yeah.
My truth is no. I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I feel like this is something Bel-Air did super successfully. And also Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. But I feel like sometimes we don't get so lucky in having something that's completely new that gives us the feeling that we're chasing, which is how we felt when we first watched that. And I feel like there's so many scripts and new characters and new dynamics that we can talk about and that could be amplified and put money towards that would give us that feeling of when we first watched the thing that we loved. And so in that way, I'm always a champion for a new story. Um, if I had the choice, I wouldn't put my money towards another remake unless it's Bel-Air season 4.
That's not a new remake. That's a continuation
Right.
of the remake that's already happening.
That's working and also has the blessing from Will Smith and Benny Medina and the people who started it and really
Right.
believe in the concept and the springboard of it. However, I'm definitely putting my money and my time between the things that took a chance, just like Fresh Prince, the things that we really were like, I don't know if this is gonna work, but we're gonna try, rather than the thing of like, we know this works, so let's do it again.
Right, right. Because the thing is, the sad truth is like it worked once, it might not work again. Like the ones that do work, I think are the exceptions. And I think also it depends on how it's being done for why it works, right? So like you can't always, I hate that expression lightning in the bottle, but like it's true. Like you can't
Yeah,
always get that.
yeah.
So plus, I mean, it's not like you're not doing other things. I want you to one more time plug the album and where, let me ask you this. I, at the end of the episodes, always like to tell people where to find the things that we talked about so that they can go watch them or listen to them, whatever, experience them themselves. Obviously, with music, things are available in a myriad of places. So where's your platform of choice for your album?
Oh my goodness. Anywhere you listen to music, Magnet will be available. I'm a Spotify girl.
Okay.
But I recently have started Apple Music. I feel like they both do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, some artists are just, I think, more like, well, I get, 0.3 cents more on this one, so please push them
I
there.
maybe because I've been doing everything independently, I'm not the most um equipped with the knowledge. That's something I'm working on. And after this album comes out, that's something that I've been searching for. But right now I'm like, let me just find my own sound. Let me do it with myself, by myself, and see what I can do. And then, I don't want to push something that I don't completely believe in or that I was, kind of um just play, just I want to make sure it was really important for me to have this album represent me and not what people wanted me to be.
Mm.
And I had different offers in that regard. But I'm like, let's just see what I sound like. And if it sucks, fine. I supported 100%. You know what I mean?
Wait, well, first of all, I don't think it would suck. I don't think a million people who worked on it would let you put it out if it
That's true.
sucked. But that does lead me to actually a question about like, what is your barometer slash like rule for how you know that you feel like the song is ready?
Whoa, I was with somebody who was like, the song is never done. It's just when you decide to stop.
Oh, that's not scary.
I know. I was like, wow, zero comfort. Thank you. But it's more of when you feel like the story has been told And I'm really happy with this. And because there's so many, especially there's a song called After Party that it was like a funk fusion record, and then it was kind of little a disco record. And then I just had this house feeling for it that I really wanted. And I found this house producer that really just it worked. And so it could have been done in those different iterations, but so I feel like when it's done, when it matches the vision in your head and in your heart. And so it's crazy because different people can love it at its different stages, but it's when you love it and you feel like this aligns with me and my taste, that's when it's done.
I think that's also the best thing for an artist to say, because somebody can be like, oh, it's done when, we put this musician on it because we know they're going to have a certain following, but like if it doesn't sound the way you want it to sound with that person, to be able to be strong enough to say like, no, I want my version. I don't really need your weird marketing advice or whatever affecting the actual product. You know what I mean? So I think that's probably one of the more, I don't know. I feel like maybe one of the more difficult things for some artists to stand up and say when they've got people in their ears from all directions.
Especially when there's a lot of money and time behind it. You never want to dismiss people's contribution to the project. So I'm really glad that and grateful that I had people around me who just gave me the time and space and tools to explore who I am right now musically.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast. But as always, before you go and listen to something else or watch something else, I want to tell you where you can find the things that we discussed today, so that maybe the thing you're going to go watch or listen to is what we discussed. So up first, we have Simone's past pop culture influence, Beyoncé. All of Beyoncé's music can be found wherever music is found. As always, I like to tout your local record stores if those are still in existence in your neighborhood. If not, obviously there's Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, etc., etc. Now, we talked about both Simone's projects, Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead, the 2024 version, and Bel-Air. Her movie can be found on BET+. Bel-Air can be found on Peacock. All 3 seasons are streaming in full now. We also talked about the originals of those shows and movies. So the original Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead from the early 1990s, unfortunately, is no longer streaming, but it is available for rent or purchase on places like Apple and Amazon. Quite frankly, if you DM me, and if enough people DM me, I will host a movie night in some sort of public park area, maybe even get some of the people from the original movie and the remake to attend. I am obsessed, and I've wanted to do that for a long time, ever since I went to those Troop Beverly Hills anniversary screenings. Let's keep in touch. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is streaming, all 6 seasons available on Hulu and on Max. So that's a lot of homework, but there's one more very important thing. As Simone teased, she does have an album coming out. It's called Magnet, and it will be available wherever music is available. Again, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, etc. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for commenting, liking, subscribing, following if you already do. If you don't, please consider it. And I will see you back here next week for another episode of Made Possible by Pop Culture, the podcast.